Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Madness Entertainment Group presents the Madness Comic Network with original programming and additional comic-related content.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kelber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Well. Greetings, Silverliners.
Good evening.
We are back. We are creating beyond calculation, beyond politics, beyond the big two. We welcome Silverliners to the wonderful world of Wednesday Wham. As always, we are joined by a healthy crew today. It's it's not a full house and it's not skeleton crew. This is our healthy crew. These are our old standbys here. And I don't mean old like, ancient, even though I am.
We just don't have anything else to do. There's just nothing else we do.
Hey, man, that's what we do, man. We love what we do. All right. Well, we're glad to have you, Rob. We've got Barb, the Empress of the Inks, Barb herself, Barb Kailberg, I should say. For those of you who don't know her, y'all know her. Everybody knows Barb. Rob Davis, the Paragon of Pencils, the superior skeptic himself. Aaron Humphreys, who tonight is going to break records on his criticism of some of these movies and pop culture. I can feel the excitement building. Oh, it's going to be great.
We need a timer for him. And Aaron, you have 10 seconds and go.
Yeah.
Go. We have one of the Wizards of Wordplay tonight. We have our favorite Scott Wakefield, your partner in crime, Rory, is otherwise engaged. I think he's writing a paper or something. I don't know. Nerd school. Working on school. I don't know. But anywho, if you've read the title, we are going to be talking about ancient myths and how they can be used not only as origins of some of the more famous characters, upcoming characters in comics, comic book worlds, but also how we can use them and how creators and aspiring creators can use them as great backdrops for their characters. So much can be found in ancient myth and in history. And the one that just pops into my mind off the top of my head, which is not a Silverline character. We like to stay Silverline focused for the first hour at least. But the Crow is very much connected to the Raven character loosely, which is a Native American mythology. Thor, obviously, Norse mythology. Hercules, Greek mythology. I'm leaning toward letting Aaron take off with this for a while because your stuff seems very anchored in your own mythology. But what kind of ancient myths do you like to see as foundations? And do you think it helps or hurts contemporary comics to be linked to such ancient myths as their grounding and their foundation? Help us out.
I don't think it hurts it. I mean, I've always liked the Norse mythologies, like Thor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and when I learned about read the actual mythologies in college and stuff. But I mean, a lot of them. I always I think I've always been more into people that make up their own myths, like Lovecraft, Conan, Lord of the Rings. That sort of stuff, like
Conan
their
O'Brien?
own mythology in which one? Sorry, Scott.
Conan O'Brien? Is it?
Yeah, Conan O'Brien.
Yes.
And,
yes. The staring contest, which we need to have that one day. Just see who can crack up Aaron first.
Crack up. Yeah, stare at me.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, it's funny. My comic, my mythology in my comic is a little more based on just that they're just an advanced civilization that just their universe was dying. I still go back. I didn't really say. I would assume it was a big collapse. Generally, I think the universe will end in a big freeze. That's just conveying the popular consensus. But I think the big collapse is kind of a cool concept. Mm-hmm. And so they escaped the fate of the universe. They were advanced enough to make their own universe and go into it, and that's it. So they were gods of their own making, and sort of they created this new home where they can be in. That was it. So there wasn't any sort of mythology of there was a universe and they created it. I mean, there was a reason why they did it. It wasn't just altruistic or whatever. I think ones that have been overdone is I think Christian mythology has been overdone a little bit. Just the devils and angels. Ones that I like to see more of is yokai, Shinto, other Japanese mythologies, things that I've never seen before. I always like horror movies that are from other countries because I've never seen their myths or whatever. They're so foreign, so it actually is twice as scary. Stuff like that. I don't think myths hurt comics. I think it can kind of trap you. I think if there's a lot of stuff already written down for you, it can kind of curb or hinder your imagination a little bit. I think it's funner to just start from scratch and make it up as you go along. That's personally what I enjoy doing more. But I do I do want to read Ragnarok, that Walter Simonson book. I've been meaning to get into that. So,
well, I think you make a good point, and to be as original as possible. One thing I love about using foundational mythology is that I believe a little bit in Campbell's idea of a shared psychology among multi-cultures. So, for example, many cultures share the flood myth. So that can bring a common psychology to readership across the world. So even though you may do destruction of the world like Ragnarok, which would lean toward Norse mythology, most mythologies have that world destruction myth. So it helps, the commonality helps communicate across cultural barriers.
Almost every single culture across the world has got some kind of a god of war and some kind of a trickster, Loki-like character.
Absolutely. And you also have similar things like I'll use an example here just in general. werewolf myths have been around almost as long as vampire myths and so on, and zombies. And the Skinwalker is a Native American version. Again, comes to mind. Can anybody think of maybe a literary example of the werewolf or Skinwalker myth that I'm thinking of right now? There is a literary example that you probably read when you were in high school or maybe junior high.
I'm trying to think. I mean, there's the original sort of myth that it started from. I think it was a French myth.
And Beauty and the
was,
Beast, maybe?
No, this is an actual real story where there was a real werewolf killing the animals. And I don't know. I mean, one of the big modern day werewolf stories started from. I have to look it up. I think it's part myth, part based in. I mean, most myths are based in some form of reality. But I do remember, I think there's been a few werewolf movies that have actually really kind of stuck closely to more of that myth that somebody was killing these animals.
Yeah, there's a what was that French movie? It was made probably 20 years ago.
That's what I'm thinking of.
I remember being really good and really like kind of a good creep level the whole time, like a good suspense, and everything's at night and by torchlight and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it was.
Did it have a character with a tricorner hat in it?
Yeah, it had the character. It had I think I know what you're talking. I think Monica Bellucci was in it.
Yeah. While you're hunting that down, I was thinking actually of Robert Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Which to me is a type of werewolfish story in the broad sense. Now, I'm not speaking, in terms of its.
That's kind of changeling, or that
alter ego, the Freudian id taking over, and that sort of idea of the monster within that overwhelms the rational mind has been around for a long time. And again, that's one reason I believe that our modern comic book Wolverine character resonates so well even now. Is it's basically a werewolf story. I think I mentioned that before. It's a technical werewolf, but werewolf story nonetheless. Barb, share with us some of your thoughts on some of your favorite heroes or villains based on myths in comic books.
Well, my character Divinity in Silverline has healing powers, which is pretty universal across any and every religion across the world. You have the stories of people who can mystically heal. I think I like the Superman myth. I mean, that too is a universal. I mean, there was Hercules, and a lot of people mix up the Roman and the Greek mythologies because they're a lot alike, but both of them have the strong man in it. And of course, in the Norse mythology, Thor is very strong.
Yes.
But I think a lot of underserved mythology is the Asian mythologies. I really like the Asian mythologies. I mean, there's so many different countries with so many different mythologies that I would really love to explore more, because we've, as a civilization, we seem to gravitate towards more Greek, Roman, Norse mythology, that the Native American and Asian mythologies are, I think, not explored as much as I would like to see.
I'd like to see that.
By the way, the name of that movie is Brotherhood of the Wolf.
Brotherhood of the Wolf. Correct,
thank you. What year? What year is that, please?
That is 2001.
Oh,
yeah,
20 years.
Quite a ways back.
21
years.
Wow.
It's an older, but that I think was based around that idea, the werewolf hunting, that French myth. I think it's been a long time since I've seen it.
One thing we're seeing more in terms of Asian mythology with the ghost-like characters in The Ring, capturing a lot of, with The Ring, which led to The Grudge and so on. So a lot of their ghost stories have sort of become now more mainstream into our culture because of just how unique It was, we hadn't seen that particular water spirit visualized like that in our environment, contemporary environment, and then the way that particular character was treated, the sort of vengeful spirit that won't rest until it accomplishes what it needs to accomplish.
Right.
And that particular look it's very common in Japanese horror. And we see it aped a lot.
A lot of Japanese horror, and also the fact that there's no happy ending. That's one of my big pet peeves about a lot of American horror movies. Is the sunrise happy? I like it better when it's like you can't escape it. It's it's more scary that way. I used to get a lot of Asian mythology and stuff through video games. When I was younger, a lot of the video games made by Japan, and so I would learn about them through that. Some through the manga I read, but a lot through the video games.
Sure,
bring over because they would always use their monsters or myth monsters as enemies in the game, and that's how you would just get used to it that way.
One thing I noticed about Asian mythology, since we're heading down that road, is there are a lot of forest spirits and nature spirit and earth spirit reference.
That's Shinto. That's Shinto, which I think it's. I'm not even sure if it's a religion that's kind of taken seriously of that per se. It's more of like. They still believe in it. It's almost kind of like go to Europe and people who believe in fairies. Do they take fairies like seriously, or is it just more of like, no, those fairies in woodland, almost like the Fae? It's not taken as a religion to worship. It's just something that's a myth they believe in or don't. But it's not this huge, impact on it. Because you can go. There's places in Japan I think you can make prayers to Shinto spirits and stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, there's levels, just like there's a gradient of faith level for every single one of these, and
hierarchy.
I would say a hierarchy, and one of the most, probably the middle of the bell curve as far as belief, would be folklore, where people kind of go, that's part of our history, that's part of our culture. We keep gnomes and fairies and leprechauns and the nature spirits of Asia and all that. They're around and they're sort of nodded to in pop culture and ancient culture, but nobody really thinks they work, although it's fascinating to me that being said, the mythologies are always highly respected, and even from Europe to Asia, you'll see little temples on the road dedicated to the guardian of travel, or in Europe, a saint that protects travelers, and you'll see little dedications and a little temple, and it's like, well, no, we really don't believe in it, but we kind of do. But we don't really.
Just in
but
case,
we kind of do.
Cover all our
just
bases
in case.
here.
Right. So it's a very fascinating psychology. But again, that goes to my point that it underpins so much of our storytelling. And I think I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Star Wars because we could stay there too long. But the idea, you know what I mean? The idea of the yin yang, of the light and the dark, of the force, and then the inflection of that struggle through characters, which is really all Star Wars is. It's very, very much Shinto, Buddhism, mixed with a little bit of Japanese samurai lore, mixed with even a little bit of Templar Knight stuff. I mean, he just put all that in a blender and threw it together, and we got Jedi. But that being said, I think that's one reason that particular franchise is still so enduring and popular, is because there's something about that mythology of the light and the dark inflected through action of human beings that people are drawn to. I mean, even you, Aaron, even jaded people like you go, it's old, I've seen it before a million times. Even you look at it and you can find something fascinating, even if it's just the art of what's being done. How, like, if you watched the Star Wars Visions material, where they actually had some anime, artists, and they just gave the Japanese just free reign. They said, look, have fun with the Star Wars stuff, and some of that stuff looks really cool. I don't know if you've seen it, but
it looked really, really cool. The Star Wars mythology, I mean, it's definitely, I see a lot of the teachings of Jedi based in Taoism, which
of course.
I've been studying Taoism for 20 years, so I see that right away. That's not a big deal. It's kind of it's almost weird though, because they do have a mythology, but their creatures, they don't have mythological creatures, they have aliens. So I think it's weird that Because most of the mythologists have mythological creatures, but they just know those are aliens. We have the mythological creatures, those are aliens, but we still have the myth part, and they combine them. Which I'm
going to come back to that in a moment, but because I want to talk about the Hindu mythology, who has fantastic creatures in it. I want to come back to that, but I want to touch base with Rob. Rob, what are your thoughts? You've worked on, I know, a lot of Star Trek, but what were your inspirations as far as like Thor and the idea that Norse mythology could be successfully not just brought into Marvel comic book continuity, but actually fused into a contemporary superhero team like the Avengers? You know, Thor is an Avenger. Explain to us how that works.
I think that's Jack Kirby at work there.
Yeah, it is,
because he's the one that created. He's the one that created Thor, and you'll see themes in his work. You know, you've got the Eternals, you've got the Fourth World, New Gods. You know, he's always kind of looking into that, and I think it kind of gets back to what mythology does for human beings. It helps them explain the unexplainable.
There you go.
That's what mythology is all about. Is human beings trying to figure out, well, why does this happen? You know, why does the sun come up every day?
It's comfort.
That's a what is it? Yeah. Isn't it Apollo with his flaming chariot going across the sky?
Is. Well, sure.
That's exactly what mythology is just trying to explain. Now, some of it is actually just plain old tall tales, stories told around the campfire to entertain bored tribal members. You know, that's how, Paul Bunyan, that's how he became, and those kinds of stories. And some of them grab hold and they become bigger and bigger and they get added onto, and you come up with Heracles or
like a game
Hercules.
Of telephone.
Yeah, exactly.
Game of telephone.
Because
fantastic.
Nothing was written down originally. They were told the stories that were the most popular. Oh, tell that one about Heracles again. So, and it would get, and a new storyteller would come along and he'd go, well, I'm going to make this story mine by adding this to that. So it just kind of, stuff starts getting stuck, and the good stuff stays and the other stuff falls away. And that's, the stuff that really entertains and explains, that sticks around and becomes mythology. That's my personal theory.
That's an excellent theory. Would you say that it's mostly Kirby's deft talent at creating and blending epic godlike beings with human beings that made Thor work with the Avengers?
Yes.
Was it really mostly due to Kirby?
Yeah, because the Thor that Kirby created has very little in common with the Norse mythological Thor. I mean, he's got the same family, but in the myths, he's got a big red beard and red hair, and he's even more obnoxious than the movie Thor is. The movie Thor is the MCU Thor is actually closer to the myth than the comic book one is. He was always a bombastic,
braggart,
for lack of a better word, a butt.
Whoa, Rob, it's family show.
Hey, I could have used a different word, and I didn't.
Heiny.
I caught myself because I said
he's
it.
Kind of
a couple episodes ago. But no,
he's kind of a bully and a braggart.
A jerk.
Yeah,
he's a bully braggart. That's perfect. That's exactly where I was trying to get to.
There's the counterpart to him, a little more humanized. Hercules in the Greek mythology is the same sort of personality. He doesn't have the same powers, but he has the same sort of personality as Thor. I've always thought those two would get along like on a bar hopping journey together, right? Hercules and Thor. How hilarious for that.
Until Hercules kills his wife and goes crazy. Then it kind of diverges from
Yeah,
that diverges just a little bit from Thor at that point. But,
you know how Greeks are, man. We turn everything into a tragedy. Everybody dies.
All a tragedy.
Everybody dies, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to get to Scott now. He's chomping at the bit over there. I can tell.
I'm loving the
Talk to us, man. What ancient mythologies have inspired you? What ancient mythologies that have been integrated into our contemporary comic book worlds have you thought worked? Maybe some of them that didn't work so well. Talk to us a little bit about your thoughts on it.
I wanted to say, and Aaron was kind of going on this track a little with talking about characters in video games and so forth, but the mythology is ripe for the gleaning, because a lot of these stories were just to warn you, don't wander off, don't go in the woods.
Yes, sure.
And so we have all these monsters out there that seem to that transcend cultures, and because we're scared of things that we don't understand. So shape changers. I really liked. So I lived in Southeast Alaska for 3 years and gleaned a lot of the stories up there. And the one that I really liked was the legend of the Kushtaka. And that is a shape changer. They're otter people. And that I'm not sure how far it goes. It's a Pacific Northwest legend.
Is this Inuit?
No, I think it's a Tlingit, and that's spelled with Tlingit.
Yeah.
Tlingit or Tlingit. I've heard. Okay. So I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it. And they're otter people that can be otters or human or like an anthropomorphic.
So there's the lycanthropy again.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing.
See?
And these again, if I don't get the legend right, I'm sorry. They would take the form of a loved one. And if you were out on the water, and they would call for help, and if you came to help them, they'd pull you in the water, and then you'd become one of them. And so they're that skin changer, that shape changer legend is always that it's got that creepy element to it. And then all of the cryptids, those legends too, Sasquatch and that sort of stuff. All those, they transcend. Every culture has them. Every culture has these, and they're all. I don't know of many that are. Most of them are bad. Most of them are meant to harm you, and few help you. And if they do help you, usually there's a catch. So it's great for storytelling. Yeah, exactly. It's great for storytelling because you either you get helped, but you're trapped. Now you've got something that I like in stories. I like the cascading problems. I love that. Like I love when the hero just can't win. And as the reader or the viewer, you're screaming at them, saying, "Stop! Don't do it! Stop!" But because this might be good in the short term, or that you think this is going to help you, but like, how do you not see what's going to go wrong? And so I like those when they put them in that jam, like now I gotcha. And especially when it's an I gotcha that maybe they can't talk about or they can't reveal. That's another thing that seems to transcend. They've got you. You can't ask for help, and so now you have a hero or a protagonist that's stuck, and their life it just keeps getting worse. So that seems to be, it's a theme. It's not the broad sense of like your Star Wars thing, those big themes, but it's like that on the level of how the malevolence can pervade all those myths. And then one that worked for me that I love, Disney's Atlantis. I loved that. They took the Atlantis myth and that and put it right in the time frame that I early 1900s. That I love that time frame.
Yeah, I think it was 1920s.
Right at the end of steam. Yeah, right at the end of steampunk.
It's it's a great movie. So I thought they took that and modernized it, made it, and that was a sleeper Disney movie. That's one of those ones that
I liked it, but it could have spawned. It actually did spawn a sequel.
Yeah.
I think didn't have a Saturday morning cartoon for a short time.
Yeah,
I don't think it did very well, but it was an animated thing on TV for a little while.
Yeah. I did like that. It's funny. I remember hearing at the research a lot, and I can't remember if this is true or not, but a lot of mythological creatures also stem from people finding dinosaur bones.
Oh, really?
They didn't know what they were finding. Yeah.
Actually, not to steal, but Rory chimed in here asking how first he asked, "Is the Lady of the Lake a water spirit?" But then he's he was asking how dragons fit into mythology, and that's another thing that transcends the entire globe. And
yes,
however you look at it, like dragons are dinosaurs, and we got our Pangea and the bones being everywhere. And it's interesting. We have all these, every continent has these stories of these leviathans, these monsters that were out there. So, and it's ripe for having something that everybody can immediately understand. But Aaron, I know we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but for good storytelling, don't be lazy with it. If you're going to glean, if you're going to take this little kernel from some mythology or some other existing story, we're talking about public domain stuff. Same thing. All these myths are in the public domain. I think they are.
Exactly. They are.
I'm joking. But
it's funny.
Sue us, right?
Yeah.
Another thing that seems to be universal is the story of some type of siren.
Yeah,
and
something to lure men.
Crows and ravens. Crows and ravens are so and foxes are so symbolic throughout almost every culture, and most of them have transformative powers, where the crow or the raven will transform into a human.
Right.
Yep.
I want to briefly address the question about the Lady of the Lake as a water spirit. You could interpret it that way. A lot of Arthurian scholars interpret the Lady of the Lake as a member of the Fae or the fairies. The fairies lived in an alternate dimension, and they weren't so much the fun fairies that we see in more the juvenile cartoons. In the classic idea, much like the elves, the classical idea was they were tall and very thin, and some were malevolent, some were neutral. In the Lady of the Lake's case, she was a member, again, in many of the scholars' interpretations, she was a member of a tribe of beings that lived in an underwater world. Some might connect it to the Atlantis myth as well. They actually forged magical weapons, one of which was Excalibur. So, again, there was another world parallel to our world happening at the same time. And Excalibur was part of that magical world that Merlin helped orchestrate so that the proper king of England would wield Excalibur and bring, peace, prosperity, and happily ever after to classical England. But that was just to address that. We also got Tommy saying, "Good evening, everyone. Everyone looking great." Hey, thanks, Tommy. Looking good too, man. Come jump in whenever you want to jump in, dude. He also was this Royal Airship? Is that Rory? By the way,
that's Rory.
Rory says Scott's pretty old. I don't know what that's about.
When we were talking about, you said the old crew.
Indeed.
Yeah, he said that a while ago.
My bad for not
go back to school. Do your schoolwork.
all right. Do your schoolwork. Darn it! I wanted to get back to epic creatures that I touched on earlier because I think this is important. There's one thing about the Hindu mythology that very much brings in these almost. I think Cthulhu was borrowed a lot from this. There was this idea that there were these epic, giant, cosmic beings that were so big and so impressive and so scary or inspiring that they would just cause you to just, turn away or go mad or run and hide. One of these, the scariest one that's been utilized by some of our pop culture material, is Kali. Kali was the destroyer, the Dark Earth Mother destroyer. And the idea... multiple arms, skeleton, skulls, multiple tongues, and
wasn't she one that actually supposed to be like? Was she the one that was to weave the world and weave the destruction and weave the creation, or am I thinking of somebody else?
Some attribute the weaving to her, but that there is another weaver.
That's right,
goddess.
Okay? So I didn't mean to interrupt. I was trying to.
No problem. This is the goddess, the equivalent, I should say, of the goddess of destruction, war, death. And it's very important to remember that in Hindu mythology, which eventually inflected itself into Buddhism, Hindu mythology was really about applying deities to the cycle of life and death, to aging, to birth, to tsunamis, hurricanes, horrific disasters were attributed to these beings.
Explaining the unexplainable.
Explaining the unexplainable, exactly. And anyway, the inflection of this ancient culture, the Hindu culture, they put so much imagination into creatures. They're fantastic. Everything from Kali to Indra. You've seen these visions of the giant white elephant.
Yep.
Indra was the king of all the gods, and he had this white elephant. And so they have elephants almost as a sacred, I believe it is a sacred animal to them. Again, the imagination of that culture is fantastic. And again, it also has in common the same sort of open-minded expansion of visualization that the Egyptians did, where they would blend human and animal beings for their gods. Anubis, for example, the god of the dead, had a jackal's head. Bast, the goddess of cats, had of course a cat head, and then and on and on and on. Ra, the sun god, had the head of I believe it was a falcon.
It was a falcon or hawk or something.
I think
like that.
you're right.
It was a hawk
or falcon.
Yep. Yeah. Hawk or falcon. So you had these blended anthropomorphic gods, and so it's fascinating to me. We go from those inflections of explaining the unexplained to then I think one reason we hyper focus on the Greco-Roman stuff, Barb, that you touched on earlier, is for one reason, most of our heritage here primarily goes to that in many, many cases, the people who started doing comic books and so on. But another part of it is the humanization of the gods that the Greeks did, where they made them petty and jealous, and they gave them the same flaws as human beings, right? So they kept a pantheon up in Olympus that was just as petty and backstabbing and mean-spirited, or inspiring and loving and nurturing as human beings can be. And so immediately there was an identification. It's much easier to identify with Hera being angry at Zeus for sleeping with all these human women than it is to identify with, a falcon-headed god or a jackal-headed god. You see what I mean? It's a little more accessible to us. Not relatable. Not so much good, bad, better, or whatever. I'm not making those comparisons. I'm just saying for storytelling purposes, sometimes it's easier to connect with the more human gods. And then of course the Romans adopted and changed the gods, and inflected them in their own way. You went from I believe Athena became Demeter, that kind of thing. Mars
Hercules became Hercules.
Yes.
And I think they kept most of the same myths. I'm not sure if the Romans, they just kind of stole the gods. They would do that all the time. They would come in and steal.
Oh yeah,
stuff.
Yeah, that's what they did, man. That's what all the empires do.
Yeah, like England and America, that's stealing all the words to put into English.
Christianity
everywhere.
Christianity did the same thing. I mean, there's no coincidence. Christmas is on the winter solstice, and
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They conscripted the Yule log and all the other beliefs and made it Christian instead.
I think that was my biggest. I think maybe that's the thing where Christianity there's not enough cool creatures to fight.
Yeah,
demon Christian, like different creatures,
demons.
Yeah, there's just demons. I mean,
well, there's the weird Revelation angels and stuff with the eyes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there is all the eyes and the seraphim and the cherubim and all that.
You look
reread Revelation, man. There's some cool. Oh man, there's some cool stuff in there, man.
Yeah,
I thought
wild creatures.
I don't know what that guy was smoking, but it was pretty good stuff.
I'll tell you what.
I did a whole paper on that for confirmation when I was like 12. I'm like, dude.
Did you really?
You did it on Revelation? Was that your choice?
Revelation? Wow, that's deep stuff.
Yeah, it was mind-bending and scary. I was like terrified.
Shout out to Rory here. Rory just learned me something a couple of weeks ago. Revelation.
Okay.
Revelation was a late edition after the Council of Nicene, because they weren't really sure. They weren't sure enough what it meant. And so when they codified, the books that we're going to, this is what we're going to accept. They said Revelation we're going to add next after we establish, we got all this. And then it was kind of like, we'll let Revelation come in. So people aren't like, wait, what? We're going to bring this one in as the rest. So I didn't know that. So Rory,
interesting stuff.
Yeah, it almost didn't make
that's
it
what
into
happens
the
when you go to
Bible.
school, I guess. Rory's a smarty pants.
Yep. It
Have you
almost
guys
didn't make it in the Bible.
heard of a book by Wayne Barlow called Inferno? Do you guys know who Wayne Barlow is?
I'm not sure. I don't. Educate us.
No. So Wayne Barlow, he was he's a naturalist painter, but he decided he did a book called Expedition, where he would like do oil paintings of like aliens or whatever. After that, and the book is just like this guy visiting his planet, and then the paintings are fantastic. He's just like he's a concept artist too. He did another book called Inferno, where he did his own interpretation of going to hell. And he did his own interpretation of hell.
Right,
but
he did his own Dante's Inferno.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. It was like, but it was supposed to be like he had in the book, he wrote it like he had been in contact with hell, and hell is a real place. It's not like this, almost like the biblical hell, but like he wrote it like, what if hell was a real place? How would it function, like the generals and the creatures? But he would have like certain demons that would pose for him in his studio that he would paint and stuff. So he wrote it like he actually was visiting these places.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, it's if you look up just Wayne Barlow's Inferno on Google, you see a lot of his paintings. The thing that's really kind of fascinating about that is he almost kind of in a way took hell mythology and rewrote it like whatever is real. I made it like the scariest thing is like if you go to hell as a human, you're turned into a brick. And you put in a house, you're still alive and completely conscious. You're just a brick for all eternity. I mean, just think how horrific that would be. You literally can sense everything that's going on, but you can't move or do anything.
All in all, you're just another brick in the wall.
Brick in the wall. They make it, and so yeah, it's and like even in that they show a picture of like.
Do we lose everybody?
I'm here.
Yeah, Scott.
Everybody back.
Yeah.
See, you started talking about this stuff,
and then you cut it.
Right? We get this like disruption from the other side, like reaching in. Right? It's like, whoa, hang on. I get what you're saying. There are several books. I have to recommend some books to you sometime on the hierarchy of Inferno and hell, as far as diabolical beings, all the way down to all the demons and so on. And you know, your idea that they're all kind of boring is
I think it's more the fact like I think in a more just
you're
like
flipping a little bit, Dean.
You're bleep bloop blop.
Yeah, you're being there you are. You seem like you're in. Well, no, blipping again. But anyway, go ahead, Aaron. You were saying.
Go ahead, Aaron.
No, I was saying there's not enough like neutral type creatures. Like in a lot of mythologies, you have like Pegasus or the type of creatures not necessarily evil. They're just these creatures that inhabit the earth. Like all the creatures are like of hell are meant to destroy humanity. Like they're all evil. And so that's what I was saying. It's just not enough. Like, and there's not enough of these creatures that are just like roaming the earth doing their thing, and we run across them. They're in like another dimension. They're in hell. They're in heaven. That was cool about Greek mythology. Is I mean they really believed you can go see Pegasus in the stable. Like they believed all these creatures just existed around this, and that I thought was a lot of Christianity, modern mythologies don't really put that emphasis that they're supposed to be all around.
Well,
you don't know it.
That depends. It depends on what part of Christianity you're talking about, because we're talking about angel. You know, a protective angel for everyone. Everyone has their own angel that protects them. There's that belief, you know.
Well, no, I'm just saying that.
Yeah.
But it's connected to humanity. I mean, like if you look at yokai and a lot of like the creatures, like the Kraken just lives in the ocean. He doesn't really care about humanity or what happens. He's just there. Does that kind of make more sense? Like it's not all connected to either the salvation or the destruction of humanity. They're just these creatures that just inhabit our planet with us. And there's that sort of idea has kind of been lost with a lot of modern religions and stuff. But I find kind of too bad. I know I kind of like that idea. So, but yeah, they are supposed to.
Yeah, I thought I had earlier was that there he's back.
Yeah.
I'm back.
Was in 100 years, a couple of 100 years.
Yeah.
What kind of things that we have created now will be religions in the future? I mean, in Nexus, there was this kind of running joke that there was a religion based around Elvis.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
what sort of, you know, I'm wondering what in a couple of 100 years, what kind of things that we have created now just to tell interesting stories will turn into an actual mythology, like Superman.
Superman. I can see strange.
I think he's going to be one.
Yeah. If you're talking years from now, I mean, I've often thought like, sometimes it's always interesting to think like if let's say humanity all died or perished, if some sort of alien, another intelligent race came to our planet, what would they make of all of this stuff? I could easily see them interpreting Walt Disney as some sort of god or pantheon. I mean, look at all the stories, animations, and myth.
They probably think Stan Lee was writing the history of our world.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, and then, I mean, I would see like even McDonald's, a symbol. Like, what would they make of that? Would it be just an eatery, or was like, well, it's everywhere? Maybe this is some sort of, I mean, religious. I mean, if you're looking at it from a completely unknown point of view, you can make all this stuff we take benign. It's like now this stuff's becoming mythological.
Now we're getting to the Galaxy Quest area. Those
sort of
people.
Fun stuff, right? I've got a question for folks. If you guys can remember this, what popular video game includes the Japanese god of thunder? You guys should know this.
I don't play video games.
Well, you would know because it was made into a movie as well.
Japanese got it. Oh, there's right.
Japanese. Yes.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding. So again, these gods, even like you were saying, like we don't get enough of the Asian stuff, but it is kind of there. You just kind of look a little deeper, and it pops
where they
up.
got the design of Raiden from? Do you know what was like the straight up influence of that? Was Big Trouble in Little China.
Yes, how awesome is that? Right?
They said they wholeheartedly just
I love that movie.
That movie.
Gosh, speaking of that movie, right? And this is going to segue into what I want to talk about a little bit later, but we'll go ahead and touch base on it now. I'm watching Spider-Man: Far From Home. I mean, No Way Home. Yes, I'm late.
And I get this all confused. I know he's not home.
He's not home yet.
He's not home yet. I guess.
I know. And everybody's like, "Oh my gosh!"
That's the next one.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's not home yet.
He's not
home yet.
Spider-Man's not home.
Spider-Man's still not home. And overall, guys, I mean, I know it got great reviews, greatly received. The effects are great, all this, that, and the other. So far, it is the most expensive sitcom I've ever watched in my life. This thing is hilarious. This thing is just, Spider-Man is running around, Peter Parker, everybody knows he's Spider-Man, and he's got to like put the genie back in the bottle. So he goes to Doctor Strange. He's like, dude, seriously, you got to help me. Like, make everybody forget that Peter Parker's. Except for my girlfriend. Like she's got to remember.
That part bugged me.
Yeah.
Didn't you guys discuss this ahead of time?
It's like my Aunt May. Yeah. Make sure she remembers. And my friend Ned too. And then he's like, oh, come on, dude. Seriously, And so I'm going, this is so like, this is just. It's a jaunt. I mean, it's literally like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory for $200 million.
That's why I have crazy. A little interest in seeing it.
It's really written, I guess.
It's a lot of fun.
It's fun.
It's if you take it as
a I guess I'll be in the mood.
Yeah, if you take it as a sort of a lark, kind of like, hey, let's just have fun for $200 million. For $200 million, I want to see something more epic a little bit for me.
Well, I think what's the disconnect with that, with a lot of comic book fans who grew up with this, is now they're digging into the mythology of the movies. They've made this mythology through the movies, and they're playing on that instead of playing into the mythology of the comics. And
that's
so
a good point.
If you grew up with the movies, you're going to get more out of it. If you just grew up with the comics, you like those more. It's just not going to do anything that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in it.
So they're essentially doing what the comic books did.
Yeah.
What the Marvel comics did. And that was they start eating their own young.
Mm-hmm. You literally, it's true. I mean, you literally, when you watch this movie, I mean, there's a part of me that's like, yeah, it's kind of cool to celebrate other movies, but it's also like, if you guys run out of ideas that you're basically grabbing other movies, pulling them, I mean,
we call it fan service now, Aaron. It's all fan service.
Yeah.
It's like, look. I call it lazy. Same with me.
I call it executive ideas, because when you think of these ideas, I mean, you see writers like, would this be and the executives like, if we brought these other dudes back, we can make serious money. So, it's executive idea.
It worked.
Right.
It
worked.
It does.
It work. It does work. But again, then
it is strictly fan service.
That's why you have to sort of walk that line as a creator and decide, do I want to just make money or do I want to do quality stuff, right? I used to joke with friends of mine who were trying to break into the business and I love so-and-so and he's making a lot of money. And, I love so-and-so. I'm not a big fan of his work. Well, he's making more money than you are. Yeah, I know. But, and then finally what we got down to was, look, if you just want to make money, you could do porn, right? And just be rich, right? So you got to draw the line somewhere. It's like, okay, if that's what you want to do, go for it.
You got to get to the bottom line.
You got to get to the bottom point. What are you going to do? You want to do something of quality that's memorable. You want to just make money. Well, hopefully all of us sort of fall at Silverline. We want to fall into that nice comfort zone where we want to do quality work and make money, right? Because you can walk and chew gum at the same time. Well, we can do both. We don't have to choose.
The one thing
I did think it was interesting that Spider-Man spent so much time nodding and winking and elbowing us and, hey, remember this, guys? Remember this? I'm like, okay, well, it's a nice reunion movie, I guess. If that's what you want to do.
I know.
Sure.
It's sad because they started bringing back stuff that I grew up as as a kid and like and G.I. Joe and now they're bringing stuff that was made in the early 2000s. Man, I consider the early 2000s recent history, not even history. I mean,
not anymore, man.
Yeah, now it's nostalgia. I'm like, wow.
Now it's nostalgia art, man. Now, like, we're the old guys going, hey, remember when, like, Lord of the Rings was at the movie theater? Look at that old dude talking about those old Lord of the Rings movies. Oh, man. But to me, they're like 5 years ago, right? And they're like 20 years ago.
Like, I just remember them the other day or whatever in the theater. I know.
Well,
there's a lot of those, and I think they're gonna just lean more into it. I think that Doctor Strange, that multiplicity, the multi-universe, they're just gonna bring everything. Even DC's doing. Let's bring back Michael Keaton. It's like, look, people, I love Michael Keaton. Let's just leave the guy alone. Let's
leave him alone, man. Leave him alone.
They're gonna throw money at him. He'll do it.
Just
segue into Batman.
Just prop him up.
That is a great segue. Oh my God, that's a great segue into Batman. So eventually I wanted to get to the part where Barb has anybody else besides Barb seen The Batman?
I have not.
I have not. And just based on the trailer, I want to be full transparency here. Based on the trailer alone, I'm calling it Junkie Batman in Bad Cosplay. Okay, so that's my take. It's Junkie Batman in Bad Cosplay. But I want to hear, without spoilers for the respect of those watching and listening, Barb, talk to us a little bit about Batman and, be as objective or non-objective, subjective as you want to be. Go for it.
There was a lot of good things about it. I actually liked the outfit. It seemed more functional and real. And the Batmobile I thought was great.
Looks like a Dodge Charger, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it is. It is. I mean, it was like a real car, only super souped up, right? It didn't have fins on it or anything like that.
What Batmobile should be.
Yeah, it was realistic. I thought that Robert Pattinson definitely shook his sparkly vampire image.
Yeah.
But he was awfully emo. I mean, oh my God, with the hair hanging in the face and the sad puppy look, and he was so pensive and brooding all the time. That was kind of annoying. I mean, they really tried to get back to the roots of telling a detective story.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, and I mean, we did have.
The operative word in there is try.
Yeah, I mean, they really tried to go back to the greatest detective. Alfred was great. Yeah. Alfred was always great.
Andy Serkis.
Yeah.
Andy Serkis.
I know, he was awesome.
People. Wow.
He was awesome as Alfred.
Yeah,
it always seems like whenever we have these movies, it's always Alfred that's the standout star.
I was just waiting for they call up and be like, Batman, my precious. He's always going to be
the two things that, and this is always my constant niggly criticism of DC movies. It was so damn dark. Can't the network invest in something more than a 25-watt bulb?
LEDs
saves on money.
Use them.
Even in the indoor scenes, like the hospital and stuff, they're all like you can barely see. Like, how can you even tell if the guy's alive? You can't even see him. You got to take his pulse to find out. And they're inside.
Yeah, by making your movie dark, you don't have to turn out the lights. It's the atmosphere, the feeling of darkness not being dark.
Yeah,
Holy
I get
cow.
that. I get that Batman rules the night. So most of the movie takes place at night, usually raining.
Blue filters.
But come on, there has got to be a limit of how dark they are. Invest in something, a little bit lighter. And the other thing was that they could have shaved off a good half an hour of the movie by cutting out the long, dramatic, pensive, brooding looks that Bruce would give or Batman would give. I mean, they spent like long seconds where he would just stare. Or the very ponderous, heavy steps. They were very slow, and I get that they were doing that. The footsteps in the distance that would slowly come towards you.
Could be they're doing what fantasy books did, and they're just padding things. Yeah, so your book is this thick,
It was meant.
I don't know.
The footsteps, and it really, he never moved fast in the entire movie. He always these ominous, unless he was fighting, it was always this real slow, ponderous. It was meant to sound ominous and raise the tension, but all it was just like, dude, are you not able to move in the suit, or is there something else going on here? Just walk.
When he walked out of it took him forever to walk out of the shadows. I was like, well, we all know it's Batman. This is like one of the Predator movies, like Predators. They tried to go back to like show, the original movie, to look into the Predator's eyes. And like, guess what? We all saw the first movie. We know who they are. You're not making a surprise. You're not surprising us. It would be more surprising if Spider-Man walked out of the shadows than Batman. That would be a surprise. But him walking out with the cape is like, I did think it was funny, not to spoil it, when he first walked out, the criminals laughed at him because, I mean, wouldn't you? I mean, this guy dressed as a big bat,
What do you got there,
Dean? What do you got there, Dean?
The trilogy. See, I like the Dark.
Oh yeah. I mean, I enjoyed it. It was a good. I mean, they were trying to get back to the greatest detective thing, and he was very human. He was a little bit too emo with the looking through his bangs all the time.
It just seemed, yeah.
And it lagged in spots. It's like, all right, yeah, picked up the pace. Here, get moving.
It's an action film. Do some action.
Yeah.
Well, I want to take you back to 2008 for a moment. Ancient history, I know, but 2008, The Dark Knight, Heath Ledger as really an anarchy version of the Joker, but so scary that it just gave you nightmares.
Pee water out of me,
right?
Yeah.
And just think about the weight and power and impact of that movie with all of Nolan's realism, strict, rules. It's got to be realistic. No giant statues, no fins on the Batmobile, all that stuff. Even with my aesthetic criticism of that, the power of that movie, the script, the intensity of it, from the two ferry boats convinced that each is going to blow the other one up. The Joker trying to prove that humanity's not worth saving, sort of the depth of his message. Batman having to go to, what was he going to, Shanghai? Does he go to Shanghai? Hong Kong. He goes to Hong Kong to capture the Chinese criminal, and how cool it was on that rooftop where he has to, swing. He goes down the glider, goes into the high rise, captures the guy, and then gets pulled out by the bat plane and carry. I mean, all that stuff. It's like it doesn't even belong in the same sentence as that. I mean, this is just based on the trailer alone. Now I haven't seen it, so I've got to be fully disclosure. But does it even come close to that bar? I mean, is it even in the same room as The Dark Knight? I mean, come on, that thing is like a legendary movie now.
It's down the hall.
It's down the hall.
I mean,
it's down the hall.
That's too bad.
But I mean, let's face it. There's nobody that's ever going to, as far as I'm concerned, ever going to approach Heath Ledger's portrayal of the Joker. He was the epitome of chilling.
Yeah.
I don't think you'd have to try real hard. And I think if anybody tried that hard, it would come across as a caricature. You'd have to really try hard to top him.
Yeah, and I don't know if the same director, I don't think the same guy did Seven, but a lot of people said this new movie is based like the movie Seven. And it kind of is.
It's a little bit of a lift.
Right. It's so the detectives in Seven were constantly one step behind the criminal, and the criminal eventually pulled off what he wanted to do. And it was this is very much the same, where Batman seems to be one step behind or two steps behind the criminal, but that's where he failed. Batman's supposed to be the guy who's supposed to figure it out and be, so when the criminal comes in to do the crime, he's standing in the room two steps ahead of him already solved the thing. And that's where this movie failed. To me, it's like Batman should have been the one to stop and when you see like a lot of the people get away with the stuff in the movie, it's like, well, Batman would have figured that out, and now so it's like he's leading back. And they also kind of got the Riddler wrong a little bit. The Riddler in the story was an egomaniac. He thought no one could be as smart as him, and his whole point in all the stories is to outsmart Bruce Wayne. He wanted to outsmart him. The riddles in this just seem kind of there. They didn't really do anything. I mean, and that was the point. And they kind of just made this terrorist character and slapped the Riddler on him. It's like, and it was like, okay, that's not really the character, but whatever you want to say.
So FruitBat36 says, somebody said this movie isn't a story, it's a mood. And he's right. It's a one pensive movie emo mood.
Yeah.
Oh my!
But now, to be fair, I'm gonna play a little bit of devil's advocate here to Aaron. This is a young Batman. I mean, he's only like.
People always say that to me, and every time I tell people I love the Zack Snyder movies, like, yeah, but that's too dark, and they make. And I get it's supposed to be a young Batman, but I don't know. To me, it's like, look, you can say young or not. If your story doesn't work, it doesn't work. You can make all the excuses in the world. I mean, I love the Snyder movies, and the internet will tell me 1,001 reasons why those movies suck, and they have all the excuses in the world. It really comes down to whether you just like the movie or not.
Yeah.
People make the excuse. It's like, if I'm going into this Batman and I don't realize he's young, or they're not saying it outright, why should I infer that? Why should I infer that in the story?
Because he looks like an emo kid.
Because he's like,
because he looks like an emo kid
Batman
with the hair, and he's looking down, and he's all depressed. Dude, life sucks.
But still, again, imagine coming into, you know nothing about Batman. You know he's a dude in the cape. There's nothing in that movie to infer that this is his starting out. Nothing. So the fact is, you have a bunch of comic book creators who know Batman, like, this is the beginning. I'm like, yeah, great. I'm glad you know that. If it's not inferred in the movie, it doesn't.
Yeah, it is inferred in the movie, though. He said he's only been at it for 2 years.
But still, 2 years is actually pretty good for a career. That's not the beginning. Somebody says you're working 2 years on a job. Do you consider somebody 2 years on a job new?
2 years. What are the statistics for 2 years as a nighttime Avenger?
A crime fighter, a vigilante, a costume vigilante. Brent Larson, welcome, my friend. Welcome.
Yeah.
So the argument could be made that his detective work improves over time as he learns.
I've heard people say that, and I'm like, I'm not waiting around for it to
even the animated Batman, which I think is one of the best Batsmans ever, was outsmarted. I loved the animated Batman. Has anyone? Sorry, not to diverge too far. Has anyone ever seen an analysis of Joker's plot really in the Dark Knight? Like how almost impossible it would to pull it off. I know that you gotta like set your brain aside for movies like that, but Joker's plot is like
disbelief.
He could never do that. Yeah, but
in the Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah. Oh well.
It's Batman.
And then speaking of Riddler, 1,000 points to whoever can answer. What weighs 6 ounces, sits in a tree, and is very dangerous? Anyone? Original Batman movie. A sparrow with a machine gun. Come on, that's simple.
Wow.
Robin,
I will go back on Barbara. I'm not getting the only reason I balk at that he's a young Batman is when I really like the Man of Steel movie. And every time I say, well, he makes a lot of mistakes and blows up a lot of buildings at the end, and I would tell them, well, because he's a young Superman, he's still figuring it out. People are like, that's no excuse. That movie still sucks. See, if I made that excuse, they would still like, doesn't work. So then why am I supposed to take he's a young Batman and make it work for me?
The Catwoman worked. Oh yeah.
No, that's like, you can't do that. You can't sit there and be like, well, it's a young Superman. Don't care. But this one is a young Batman, so you take that in consideration. I'm like, no.
Oh, I was just playing devil's advocate. It doesn't change the fact that I thought it was ridiculous. Fruit Bat says, did Catwoman work?
Woman work.
She did. Zoe Kravitz.
She kind of did.
Oh. I didn't like the head.
No, I didn't like. She looked like she had
a little strip across the nose.
I have a question about Catwoman. I have a question about her in this movie because again, I haven't seen. So I want you guys to clarify for me. I read that she pretty much schools Batman and pretty much, you know how sort of the common approach to the Batman Catwoman relationship is that he's pulling her to the side of the angels, right?
Oh, yeah.
And in this movie, the idea, I've been told, now you guys confirm this or not, that she's sort of selling him on the idea of, hey, it's okay. I mean, you know, I'm sort of stealing from people who don't need what they have anyway, kind of a thing. And plus, she's a little more of a violent criminal than our standard Catwoman. Is that true or not true?
I don't think.
Well, I'd like to jump in at this moment and say I'm late to the conversation. So you guys are talking about the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yep. Jack
Exactly.
Sparrow. That's
yes.
why I brought
Jack
up
Sparrow
okay.
and
with a
Catwoman.
With the machine Catwoman.
Gun. Yes.
I will say
I think the 9th Pirates movie.
Batman was very much like, okay, I need help with this. I'm not interested in your extracurricular stuff, which in a way kind of makes sense because that's kind of what he's all about. He's not necessarily beating up people and then reading in their rights or, you know, asking them if he hit the criminal too hard and would he like an attorney, etc. So why would he give Catwoman trouble if she's going to do some crime on the side? So I didn't.
Well, that's always been like the big red herring. Is like, well, we've got to stop Catwoman for like, you know, stealing stuff. I'm like, dude, you assault people every night.
Yeah,
that's a crime. So I mean, you're a walking crime as it is. You're running around like, yeah, but they're criminal. Still assault, dude. You know, I don't mean to be, you know, very bad. You know,
but see, then what you've done there is you've eliminated the fantasy element that has been the sort of given of all these vigilante superheroes. Is it's okay in comic books to do that. We don't do that in real life. That's why it's a comic book, right? So when you get too close to realism, therein lies the problem of applying legal issues and all of that. Then it's no fun anymore because you're like, well, God, if you're going to apply, you know, realistic legal issues, none of these comics would work. Nothing would be realistic enough. Nothing would work because they're all fake. And let's just, you know, read true crime books. You know,
blur the line when they always bring in the DA and the courts and everything. I'm like, we're bringing in courts and stuff in those movies. If you're bringing in this sort of idea of realistic law, then
don't bring realistic law. Don't try. I mean, you can bring in a realistic law that's integral to the world of fantasy that you've created. But if you try to put like, well, you know, Batman just broke this law, this law, this law, I'm out because then it's not a comic book anymore. It's not a fantasy. This is fantasy.
Yeah. But
you know what I'm saying?
Like, but it's just one of those things. I mean, it's a fantasy. It's a power trip. You know, fantasy.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's like Zorro. You know, why was Zorro invented? Because there were all these oppressive warlord rich guys taking advantage of these poor people. And so one of the rich guys was like, that's not right, man. I'm going to pretend to be this foppish rich dude, learn all their secrets, and then at night I'm going to dress in black and make everything right and take my own vigilante justice out on
that bugged me about the movie was that Bruce is supposed to be a playboy. This guy's a hermit.
Yeah, he's supposed to be like smooth and cool, and you know.
This guy was a hermit. He was never seen outside of.
Well, this guy, look, the guy's a junkie. Okay, look at him. All right, if you saw him on the street, you go like, "Hey, man, this guy needs help." I mean, God, you know, he's depressed. He's this, he's that. Bruce Wayne's whole attitude. Actually, there is no Bruce Wayne is the disguise. Batman is the real character, right? So Bruce Wayne is the disguise. Bruce Wayne is the, hey, how's it going, ladies? I mean, that's Bruce Wayne, right? And
He's
the reason he
Scarlet
does
Pimpernel.
that, yes, he's doing that to disguise the fact that at night he dresses up like a bat and takes his revenge on all the bad guys and hands them over to, Commissioner Gordon so he can put them away. But again, fantasy world, the closest it got to realism was probably Nolan, right? At the peak, which is probably Dark Knight. Most people would agree. But you don't really want to go any more real than that. You probably don't want to go any more real than that. Otherwise, it's just going to be like a procedural police show tonight on Batman.
Dun, dun.
Batman, dump.
I just think I don't care if it's real or not. I mean, with disbelief, but I do think there are interesting stories you overlooking because of that. I do think, the fact that the cops are trying to take him down because he is a vigilante, but the fact that, it'd be interesting. I'm sure there's some stories of people come back to Batman. It's like, well, look, Mr. Crime Fighter, you've broken a ton of crimes. That'd be a good moral idea to talk about in the story instead of Batman like, yeah, but Batman's justified in doing that because he has a better cape than you.
He has a better cape.
It's just it could make for some interesting, strange stuff when you actually bring in some of those moral dilemmas into superhero stories. You actually get some pretty interesting stories. But
then you go, they do that a lot. They've been doing that for the past 30 years. The last 30 years has been deconstructing Batman ever since The Dark Knight Returns in the late 80s, right? 87, whenever it was. They've been deconstructing him. Yeah, they've been deconstructing him. Well, if this was real, look how the media would treat him. Look how society would treat him. Look how, okay. But how many times can you do that? We know that. It can't be real. Anybody who would do that would end up in jail. So.
I think Batman also tends to bring itself to real because you can actually see a possible guy really doing this. You can't see anybody climbing walls like Spider-Man. Nobody can fly like Superman. But you can see somebody had enough money actually doing this. I don't know.
But would they wear hockey? Would they wear hockey pants?
Yeah, but the fact
when
is,
would they
you can
sleep?
see somebody.
How would they get?
If you can see somebody doing it, then you would be
That's
like
the hardest part.
And also, you're also talking about coming from the comic book page to the movie. You can disbelieve Batman beating up criminals on comic book page because it's drawing and the drawings and it's fancy comic book disbelief.
Sure.
Once you put a dude in a bat suit on a regular street corner where we're like, because you can't watch a live action Batman movie and not watch it and be like, yeah, this is the real world. Why? Because I'm looking at real live photography of the real world. And I'm looking at a real dude in a real bat suit. It's not a drawing. So there's obviously got to be some component of like, yes, there's disbelief, but there's also like if you're breaking the laws of physics. Like if Batman's doing amazing things when he's like jumping 6 stories down and he lands safely. Okay, in a cartoon, whatever. In a real life movie, dude, I'm looking at a real building. I'm looking at real gravity. I'm looking at real effects. You can't pull this one on me.
Gliders, but glider the glider idea works. Like I thought Nolan did a pretty good job.
I didn't realize his cape turned into the glider in the new movie.
It did on that day.
Yeah, I didn't. I was like, "What? How did he get what?" Okay, I didn't snap. I didn't figure that out.
Now, not too many spoilers, people.
I will say there is one element that actually helps me with the suspension of belief and for fans talking about, and that is that we're talking about the idea that Batman is quasi in the real world, but we're talking about a city that is worse than any city you can imagine. So you're literally saying the cops, they're not going to solve it. What happens when
the cops are as bad as the criminals? Yeah,
exactly. The Joker shows up. Can you imagine him being let loose on like Orlando? We're all dead. And it's like, well, what are you going to do? The answer is you got to get extreme. And think about, here's maybe a good thought. You've heard stories of like the cops bringing in like a medium or a psychic. And people are going, what is that person even doing here? This is insane. This is dumb. This would never happen in real life. And yet it does happen from time to time.
It does happen in real life.
I am so out of my element and this environment is so bad. We need a specialist. Batman is the specialist. That's
right, but
probably
the
how
difference
I look
between
at
it, if the going belief of that is the terror or the psychic is not beating up the people they find. Batman
But
is.
that would be a good story.
Wouldn't it be a
I'm
great
gonna write
story?
that down.
Wouldn't that be a
Wouldn't that
good
be an
story,
awesome
right?
story? A psychic
Okay,
who
it's
can
mine.
Yes.
That's mine. I'm taking it.
take it, tracks down people psychically,
Wait a
like
minute.
kicks the crap out of them.
Yeah.
And then when the
Psychically.
cops come to arrest the guy, like, why'd you beat him up? Trust me,
he
had it coming.
You had it coming.
Okay.
You don't even know.
You have no idea.
Or the
for fan-
criminal's lying in a puddle of blood, and the cops are like, "What did you do?" And Batman's like, "I didn't lay a hand on it."
Did not even touch him.
Did not lay a hand on. And for fans says he hasn't become the Bruce yet. That Bruce yet. I would argue the Bruce Wayne we know hasn't been in this movie. So that's a common argument for the movie as well. And he's also saying it's possibly a disservice to compare the Batman properties. It's what we do, and for fans, it's what we do for fun. And he likes the movie, and that's great. I mean, everybody's gonna have a different opinion on it. The Batman of Toronto.
Yeah,
Has anybody seen the Batman of Toronto?
He said,
Explain that.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to go about that.
Okay,
sorry about that. Yeah, hoser.
Toronto is a lovely city. I've been there many times.
That being said, though, I'm going to flip it and really flip Aaron's arguments against him on something that he agrees with. Look, Marvel does this incredible suspension of disbelief stuff all day long. The destruction of, and they use real cities.
Yeah.
The destruction of New York City, the Tesseract. Are you kidding me? Iron Man doing all the crazy stuff. Doctor Strange making stuff up as, it's happening. Oh, wow, but this happens. Come on. This is like, there is no suspension of disbelief. I think the reason that you kind of bristle at the Batman is because it's this close, right? It's so close to reality, right? So the Marvel stuff it's in a reality, but because maybe the humor, maybe the pop music they use, maybe the fact that there's so much flippancy in the dialogue, maybe that's keeping it from you getting kind of bristle at, he just destroyed that whole building.
I do bristle at the Marvel
too,
stuff.
Trust me.
The Marvel stuff, it's
time.
like, especially my friends, like, I remember my friend's not a comic book fan. He watches the Marvel movies, and he takes us about any movies. He's like, it's funny, I watched those movies, and those people would have died 10 times over in one movie. Every single one of them. Iron Man would have been hit by a missile or something. The shock from the impact would have literally liquefied his insides, and it would have, I'm like, yeah, that's true. Like, so, yes, it is suspension of reality. It is ridiculous.
The force that Hulk needs to force downward to leap upward would level buildings. I mean, like every bit of physics, and we can take Star Wars. For a spaceship to go from multiple times the speed of light to stop, everyone would splatter. A space battle,
forward momentum.
Lasers go forever. So do you think
there's no fire
Imperial
in space.
Star Cruisers and you think X-Wings and TIE fighters, there would be a sea of laser beams and a sea of destruction that would shred everything to bits. And I love nitpicking. I love it. It drives my mom and my sister nuts. But I can also enjoy the movie. Like, there's two parts of my brain.
I'm not saying some of the Marvel movies I don't mind or whatever, but I mean, strangely enough, though, in some movies, if you actually bring in real physics, it makes the movies much more interesting. But sometimes, superhero movies or whatever.
Babylon 5,
I just have a hard
Star
time
Trek.
envisioning a movie with the Hulk where he has to get to the top of a building, so he has to take the stairs, or like, the rebels are going to take on the Death Star, and then you have a caption that says 1 month later, and they're like, they all have beards, and they're like, half of us have died of starvation, and we're only like a quarter of the way there.
And then we're gonna put in relativity, and they get there, and everybody's already dead and aged because of the movie, the speed of light.
A bunch of old people, they've all retired. They turned the Death Star into a retirement home. They got rid of the laser years ago.
Darth who? Oh, Vader.
Vader,
He's like three Darths back.
Yeah, I know. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's strange. And I take Star Wars and all that is, that sense of disbelief. But Batman was always supposed to be a sort of quasi.
No.
Daredevil is
no.
Daredevil.
It's fantasy.
Yeah.
It's fantasy. Where's the poetry in your soul, Aaron?
Well,
poetry, my friend.
But I'll say
Come
this,
on.
and
It's
this
what we
is
live
where
for.
The new Batman movie does this really well, I think. It is fantasy because a guy's running around dressed as a bat. That doesn't make any sense on any level that we recognize. But what you do is you take the fantasy element, you say, okay, here are the parameters. We're living in a city where dressing up as a bat is weird, but it's acceptable. And then you make everything within that reality make sense. So that's why the dynamic with Jim Gordon is really interesting. We haven't seen it like that in any other Batman movie because it's
great point.
Kind of real.
I mean,
great point. Great
you guys
point.
Also have to remember, growing up with comics, I've said this many times, I didn't read superheroes. They were not my favorite. I did not. The only superhero stuff I read was the X-Men. And the only reason I read the X-Men is they look like a bunch of punk rockers. I thought that was cool. When I saw Batman and Superman, when I saw all those guys, even as kids, I was still going like, why is that dork in that stupid costume? I thought that even as a kid. And there's a part of me still thinks it today. So,
Aaron,
I like,
you're Alan Mooring it.
Yeah,
You're
I like
killing
Fruit Bat's comment.
I don't like Alan Moore either.
Fruit Bat makes me think of the end of Monty. Wait, go back one. End of Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They're all in costumes.
They're all in costumes. The police
getting taken away.
Come up and drag them off. All right, that's it. Pack it in. Here we go.
Actually, when Fruit Bat brought that up, his last comment, it just had me sorry for a laser beam the space found a Final Destination. That would be funny if they actually shot a laser in Star Wars and like in Return of the Jedi, like a laser just goes to like Vader's head, and they traced it for the first movie. He demised his own death and didn't even know it.
Very great. Fruit Bat says that would be a fun story in Star Wars. Follow a laser beam in space. That's just great. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Infrafan says Aaron Moore.
See, the funny thing is like Alan Moore. Like, I don't see how Alan Moore is like. I guess his Watchmen, but his League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was not realistic. His V for Vendetta was okay. Alan Moore's boring to me. I can't. I've tried to read his books. God knows I have tried, and halfway through, I'm like, dude, you're just boring, man. And even when I would watch, Watchmen, where they're like pontificating on the ideas of morals and stuff, I'm like, yeah, but you're wearing an owl costume, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't see past that. There's just something like I just can't see past like.
Right.
Okay,
right.
but you're still.
But hey, I mean, you're kind of doing the same thing with your Godlings characters. I mean, they're cartoon characters, but again, the belief, the suspension of belief, we're there with your characters because the environment, right? And because, wait for it, here's the ultimate, because it looks cool, right?
Yeah.
Right? That's why we love ultimately, for me as an artist, if it looks cool, I'm with you, man.
Well,
I'm with you. Whatever you're going to do, I'm with you.
This stuff works in comic books. I was talking more when you bring it into real life movies. This is why I always had the biggest problem when the movie sometimes did it. I mean, like when he's wearing the owl costume in the comic book Watchmen. Okay, it's a comic book, whatever, they do that. It's just when it's when you put it in stuff in real life. Stuff doesn't translate from comics into real life all the time. They just look like it's like
it can't always work.
It can't always work. I mean, you see it in real life.
They look like Halloween costume.
Yeah,
it doesn't.
The Batman movies have to create the entire environment. I think, like, saying, the entire city needs to be, or the entire story world.
And I love the Christopher Nolan films.
Speaking of that, at the end of the Batman movie, we waited through all the end credits to see if there was an Easter egg. Wasn't worth it.
Oh, poor you.
It was. Don't.
Google is your friend.
I won't do it. I won't do it.
And I tried to Google and I couldn't get any service in the theater. Anyway, it showed all the locations that they had filmed at, and there was like 7 or 8 locations, and they were all over the world that they filmed that, so they could get this particular shot to look as gloomy as possible. Like Liverpool, Chicago, London. I can't remember all the ones, but there was dozens. They
there was one scene in the very beginning where they showed
Memphis.
Well, they showed Times Square in New York in the very beginning of the movie, and they didn't even try to disguise it. I'm like, okay, look, you're saying me this is Gotham, but that's New York Times Square. I mean, that's obvious. I cannot unsee that.
Iron Man statue right
there. You know. And they did the same thing as some of the Batman. Like, I love the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, but by the third one, because I actually liked all of them. But he didn't even disguise the fact, like, look, it's just Chicago, dude.
Yeah.
That's like,
perfect segue to what I was going to say. Anton Furst, the production designer of the 1989 Batman, along with Tim Burton, known for his fanciful visualizations, right? One of the reasons that movie worked so well was because we established incredible fins on the Batmobile, giant statues, impossible cathedrals, impossible everything, but it worked in that world. So the problem and danger of realism, getting too close to it, is it pours ice cold water all over the fantasy, and you can't use
Batman. The Tim Burton one worked great.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about.
The whole thing is a fictional city, and he tied, because I've always argued when you take Batman out of Gotham City, he just looks like a
weirdo.
He sticks out. Yeah, he sticks out. He's wandering around your neighborhood. Where are all the gargoyles and stuff? I mean, if you want to break the reality of Batman, imagine him running down your suburban neighborhood street.
Yeah, which is like Marvel does that well. They do their self-awareness, especially with a Spider-Man. Like he's when he meets Doctor Strange, he's we're using our superhero names. Or when he runs out and there's no building, he's on the golf course. And it's like they make they're self-aware that there are some absurdities that it doesn't fit.
Right.
It's funny. You're right though. But you take them out of Gotham. It's like what's going on here?
What's going on?
It's just some schizophrenic dude.
Oh yeah. I've told people many a time I'm not superheroes. I take or leave them. I mean, I have a few superhero runs. Majority of the stuff I collect is sci-fi, fantasy. Very little superhero stuff. And it's sometimes, and I hate that. Sometimes it's kind of annoying that when I say I'm a comic book fan, they immediately just think like we're Marvel, DC, and I'm like, no. Why do you always just assume that? It gets kind of old after a while, and it's like when I talk about other things, I'm like, we don't know anything out of Marvel and DC. I'm like, of course you don't.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's like, okay, then, I give up. This is why I have a hard time connecting a lot of modern comic book fans, because unless you're just, getting it on over Spider-Man or Batman, and like my friend Tom says, I just do not care if they all died in a cataclysmic fire. I just don't care. And it's like, sometimes I don't either.
That's why we love you. That's why we love you, Aaron, because you give us the dark perspective on superheroes.
Which is why
and I like sci-fi. I like sci-fi fantasy too.
I think, and if they made the DC and Marvel world, or any comic book world, I'm saying the big guys, though, if they made them more real, meaning they aged, if you set a time, and they're old and they all die, I honestly think we'd care about them more. And if you had to reboot them all after 20 years or 10 years or 5 years, I think they'd be more realistic, because we care about them more as real people, not this timeless Tony Stark living from Vietnam to the Desert Storm, and he's like, or you could have the like Cap or Thor that are timeless.
Sure,
fine.
Oh
fine.
Yeah.
But if the real people, Batman, that's kind of Aaron. You said you liked the Batfleck. You like Ben Affleck, because he's an old Batman, right? And he struggles. That's I mean. If they aged and that you knew that they were finite, which is what the movies had to do.
Yeah,
the movies had to do that because they got real people.
So my favorite.
That's why they killed off Tony Stark in
what?
Yeah.
In Endgame.
Spoiler!
Oh, you just crushed everybody.
Because Robert Downey Jr. was aging. He was aging.
I heard about.
Is it sad that I remember I was in the theater and that happened, and everybody in the theater was sniffling and crying, and the only thing I thought is like, yay!
You giggled.
I was like, yay! I was like, Robert Downey Jr. gets to make other movies now. That was my biggest thought. He's out of his contract.
Yes.
I mean, after so many years, you'd be like.
But they'll all flop, and he'll have to come back as Iron Man to be
as
an
older, crustier Iron Man.
Yar!
Yeah. This is like when Harrison Ford is like, I want to talk about Star Wars. I don't want to do Han Solo. I don't want to do.
No, we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Infrafan says Aaron is the spice of life. God bless him. And I agree.
Yes. Thank you.
God bless Aaron for being the spice of life. And that brings us, ladies and gentlemen, to a close for this episode. But before we go, yes.
Kickstarter. Remind everybody.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
yes.
I'm sorry if I jumped the gun.
Go for it.
Yeah, and it's
No.
Kickstarter is funded, so everybody's getting their comic books. Anybody out there that wants to back that thing, you're getting yours too. So it is a guarantee. We have at least, I think, a dozen, right? 11 or a dozen back. Everybody's gotten their books. There's no. They're out there. How many?
17.
Well, 17 titles, but how many Kickstarters?
Kickstarters.
17. Yeah. All of our Kickstarters have been you've been fulfilled. That's the word I was looking for. Everybody's been fulfilled. So, folks, let's get these stretch goals so we can get all our extras, because I want my extras. So I'm telling my friends, tell your friends if you've backed it. If you haven't backed it, get on Kickstarter. Go back. You search Roland Man. That's the easiest way to. But you can also search the Wolf Hunter, or Sirens. Wolf Hunter will get you there. We're on Kickstarter right now. Go back our projects. Thank you for everybody out there that's made it possible, because we want our extras. I want my extras. So get on Kickstarter.
I've got a couple of cool things I've thrown in.
Yes,
so,
yes.
And if we reach the first stretch goal, everybody will get some really cool bookmarks. If we reach our second stretch goal, everybody's going to get a Gree bag. A voodoo Gree bag.
Oh,
nice.
The voodoo. Okay,
Voodoo,
cool.
yes.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah, get over there. And folks, share it. Send it to all your friends, because we want to get these goals done. And that helps, of course, Silverline be as even awesomer than we already are.
Well, of course it does.
Thank you for letting me take over there, Dean.
No. I'm glad you did. And as we get ready to close, we always close with our favorite motto.
We do,
which is
Make mine.
Silverline.
Hey, I'm Alex Saviuk, and I just want to let you know, make mine Silverline.